Morning, Steve here, and today I remembered to actually put the microphone in front of me, so it's not like, although it seemed to work pretty good just lying on the table in front of me. All right, so really interesting times from my experience, and your experience may be similar. That you're finding the times we're in interesting. I think that was the supposedly a Chinese curse that may you be born into interesting times, and and according to some people who made it up, this was a curse in China that you'd be born into interesting times. So I think we have either experienced that curse that we're be born into interesting times, or we're making it up that it's a curse because somebody told us was, or we're not finding the times interesting, we're finding them something else. And we begin to realize how many choices that we have for the way in which we perceive reality, and begin to understand that reality is a construction. One person's reality is completely different than another person's reality. And what's the difference in reality? It's the difference between those two people's perception of reality. So, and reality is very different for those two people who perceive it differently. So, how are you perceiving reality? How am I perceiving reality? And is my perception of reality in some way useful to you, or your perception of reality in some way useful to me? So I'm just going to talk briefly about a few books that I found to be useful. One is called The Nature of Personal Reality, and this was written by Jane Roberts, and I think in the 70s. But it's a very interesting book. It's part of the Seth materials, where she actually brought information in from this other dimensional being who began communicating with her and told her that he'd like to write a book in which he'd be willing to transmit it. And her husband wrote it down. That's another reality. That's a construct of reality about a book that is about constructing reality. So this is multi-levered and multi-leveled. And another book that I would, just you might be interested in reading up a little bit about. It's called Entangled Life, and it says how fungi make our worlds, change our minds, and shape our futures. This was written by Merlin Sheldrake, who's, I think, has his doctorate in fungal matters. So he's an expert in the field of funguses and mycelium and how they interact and connect. Then my latest book, which I've been doing a lot of listening to this person through the internet, Thomas Hubble, and this is his most recent book called Attune. And what it says is practicing interdependence to heal our trauma and our world. Now, I've been really interested in trauma ever since I heard the word trauma and the world trauma, the word world trauma and the word trauma. Those words seem to mean something to me. I felt like I was living in a traumatized world. I felt like I was experiencing trauma on a fairly regular basis, just being around people who felt traumatized to me. And so some people felt less traumatized and some people felt more traumatized. And I noticed there was a difference in how they felt, not only in how they looked, but there was other signals. There was how they looked. There was the tone of their voice. They were the energetics, whether it felt safe to be around or not safe to be around. And so I think we're all experiencing this now. We've watched this whole hullabaloo that has gone over the last 4+ years. I think it started in March 2020 about be afraid, be afraid, be very afraid. And then we all experienced and watched people get very afraid, stay 6 feet apart, stay 6 feet apart, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Like, be afraid, be afraid. Microorganisms are going to take you out, and all of that kind of thinking. And it affected people. It affected people strongly. And in my course of studies of healthcare, since the early 70s, so over a period of 50 some years, was that the adrenal glands, which are involved in fight or flight or being stressed, have an intimate relationship in our immune function. So when our adrenal glands are working well, our immune systems are working well. So what are you doing when you're stressing people out about getting sick? Is you're actually leading them with your thoughts into being sick. And people were led into this experience. They're giving a number of different options on how to get sick and how it all worked. They were told this is how it works. You got to stay away from people. You can't go to funerals. You can't go to weddings. You can't have weddings. You can't, all the things that were made up because that was the reality that was constructed, created, affected all of our lives, and has led to where we are now, which is in confusion and wondering what on earth's going on and how can I deal with this world that just seems so currently stressful to some of us who have the reality. This seems really stressful. What am I going to do about it? So we may have found things that we could do individually, and we may be doing some of those things. And for me, I felt like it would be useful to do videos about what has worked for me. And there have been many things that have worked for me. And I was just thinking about whether or not I would read the little bit on the start of the new month. So I will just briefly. The Mayan calendar, it's more in the order of nature, and it's been around for a much longer time than this Pope Gregory calendar that was, I think, in the 1580s or something. I looked it up and I just don't remember it because I'm trying to move out of it and move into more of a nature related. So 28-day moon cycles, which lead to 13 months if you just do the math, which lead to 364 days and then a day out of time. That's just thrown in there to fill in space with a lack of time or a different version of time. But that's the simplistic approach to understanding that the Mayan people really looked at nature, were in a relationship with nature, and that relationship with nature, just this calendar emerged out of relationship. Like, this is actually what happens. The lunar cycle is 28 days. That ought to be a month. And there are 365 days. There's some alteration in minor variations of time, I think, because the poles were thrown off slightly, and so things were slightly off balance. So there was some corrections made in the math. Mathematical corrections. So there are 13 lunar or moon lunar tones. They just cycle every 13 days. You go through from 1 through 13. We just completed the 13th lunar tone yesterday. It just happened to be the last day of the month of the Mayan month, the spectral month of liberation. So today happens to be the start of the crystal month of cooperation. And you want to know about the crystal month of cooperation, just have a really dear friend of you gift you this book for supporting them through a very deep, kind of dark night of the soul healing experience over the course of a few weeks. And they felt like they just wanted to give you this gift. And I appreciate it because I've been really appreciating this person, Thomas Hubble. So, tone 1 of the 13 tones is the magnetic tone. And the point of it is to unify, attract, purpose. And the words at the top are, all things are the differentiation of one infinity. Just kind of nice. I like it. So interesting that yesterday was the last day of the month. And yet, in terms of the 20 kin, which you can find out who your kin are by going to 13moon.com, and it says record a birth date. Hit that button, put in your month, day, and year of birth, and hit the button, and voila, you'll find out who your kin are. And the kin are 1 through 20. There's 20 kins. I just discovered today that the way they're placed in the book are in the direction that the Native American people move is counterclockwise. And it starts, and I don't know too much about this, but I'm going to say a little bit. It may or may not be accurate, but it starts with the red dragon is the beginning of kind of creation, and it goes through the white wind, and then it goes that direction. So it goes red, white, blue, and yellow, and it just keeps going through the 1 through 20 kin. The first of the kin is the red dragon. The 20th of the kin is the yellow sun. And so the month was ended and begun on some levels yesterday. So yesterday was the last day of the 11th month of liberation, and was completing with a beginning, because all completions are beginnings. And so I'm just going to recommend Thomas Hubble's books because he just is brilliant and just explains all these things that I think about in a way that make them make a whole lot more sense. And it's easier to read his words than to listen to mine, I find. Not that I don't listen to my words, because a lot of information comes through me when I'm doing these videos, and all these videos tend to help me in this process of awakening, and so probably are helping others who are in this process of awakening and this process of cleansing. Okay, so today is a white magnetic wind day. Magnetic is the first of the 13 tones. White wind is the second of the 20 kins. So white magnetic wind is what today is. And the white wind is about communicating, spirit, and breath. And I'm just going to read just the top words that were spoken by Dennis Kucinich. And I don't know if this is a person who like ran for president a number of years ago, but he seems like he's a pretty conscious person, and these words are good. And he said, "Spirit merges with matter to sanctify the universe. Matter transcends to return to spirit. The interchangeability of matter and spirit means the starlit magic of the outermost life of our universe becomes the soul light magic of the innermost life of ourself." So that's Dennis Kucinich, and I appreciate those words. And I'm just going to say, for people who are really interested in knowing more about this, they can go to 13moon.com, and just when it says Dakota date, it will have today's date. You can hit that and it'll tell you all about white wind. Because I'm not going to do that today. What I'm going to tell you about is this card that I picked today as the world card, what we may all be working with or what we may choose to be working with. And this is the Ten of Cups, and cups relate to emotions. And the word on this card is satiety. Or satiation or satisfaction are different meanings and different ways to say a similar thing. So the Ten of Cups is satiety or emotional contentment and satisfaction. And you may say, well, I'm not really feeling that today. I'm not really feeling emotional contentment and satisfaction. And I didn't wake up feeling this way either. I found the dream world last night was really instructive, kind of in that, they were just going to hit Steve over the head with this information and have him look at these things that he, tends to try to avoid until he finally accepts that, oh, I got to look at this and now I got to change. So look at this and change, look at this and change, look at this and change. That does seem to be one way to go through this life. If one feels like one's on a soul path, and so many of us do, we're on a soul path, and we feel like we're searching for the answers. What are the answers? What are the answers? And so we may come up with a whole lot of different things that make sense to us. And I would say that the one answer that has consistently come up for me is change. Well, how do I go about this? Change. Open up to the ways you can change. Because if you have dissatisfaction, it's coming from the world you're creating out of your consciousness. So if your consciousness changes, especially if it expands and connects to this higher consciousness, then it's simpler to recognize the change, like, oh, I need to let go of this. Oh, I need to let go of this. Oh, I need to allow this to emerge. And so when I got the Ten of Cups this morning, I was like, satisfaction, that isn't necessarily what I'm feeling right now. And then I had the thought, well, is it something I could be feeling right now? And that's how it begins. Might I be able to change how I'm feeling by acknowledging something inside me that's attempting to emerge? And what is it that's inside me attempting to emerge? Well, it may be that this card helps me discover what that is. And this card says that this state of emotional contentment that comes from deep within. So I'm just going to state out loud right now, I connect to the deep self. And you can do this as well, just to notice what that does. This is the state of emotional contentment that comes from deep within and radiates out in all aspects of our life, which is represented by the 10 cups on the Kabbalah or Tree of Life. And so this is what this card is representing, is the Kabbalah or the Tree of Life. And those cups are holding the emotions of satisfaction. So this is satisfaction or contentment that is coming from within the cups, coming from within and radiating out. So if you go, oh, well, is there anything that I feel emotional contentment about? And it may take you into emotional contentment. Then you feel that, and then that may be what you radiate out. The 10 of Cups is different from the 9 of Cups in the extent that the 9 of Cups is happiness that can be tangibly pointed to in the external reality. The 10 of Cups is deep emotional contentment and satisfaction that comes from within and externally radiates the quality of contentment and satisfaction out. And it talks about some other things. It talks about it being Mars and Pisces and, whatever. I just think the thing to consider today, if you've come this far, the thing to consider today is, can you find emotional satisfaction within yourself, and can you radiate that out? And when you do so, do you like that experience? And is it possible you can repeat that throughout the day? Feel your emotional satisfaction, feel it, and then radiate it out. And I think that's a lot of information. I'm going to look forward to, listening to this, pretty soon. And I hope that it serves you in some way, and that we make it through this together by supporting each other in an interdependence. All right, and an inner dependence. And someday we'll celebrate our Interdependence Day. All right, and we probably won't be lighting firecrackers, but we might be letting our light shine. Okay, that's good enough. Hopefully good enough for all of us. And now must go.